Good afternoon to you. Mark's out of HurricaneTrack.com here. Hurricane Outlook and discussion time. It is Friday, the 30th day of July 2021, and we need to talk about the peak season that's coming up here. Signs are that it's going to get very busy here in about the next 3 weeks or so. We're ending July. We had Elsa at the early part of July, nothing else really since, and we got close, but it's been the Eastern Pacific that's been somewhat busy. It is going to remain busy the next few days, maybe even a couple of weeks, and then after that calms down, as this graphic here shows you from Ben Knoll that we've included in the thumbnail for today. It's going to start getting busy. Once the Eastern Pacific calms down, the Atlantic Basin is going to sort of take over. And we got that little caution sign up there. It is my job to keep you aware, show you the science, show you the methodology behind why we think things are going to be busy, and then when stuff forms, we talk about where it might track and how might it affect you and how strong it could be when it potentially gets to where you are located. Because at the end of the day, it's all about you. It's not about me. It's about you guys and informing you based on what I know. All right, so let's get started, shall we? Looking in the Pacific, 3 areas of interest right now. I think all 3 of these are going to go on to develop over time, and 2 out of the 3 might be hurricanes. We'll have to wait and see. The good thing is none of these, if we go down and look at the 5-day portion, what we call the 5-day graphical tropical weather outlook, none of these are going to be close to the Mexican coastline or Central America over here. So that's good news. They'll just move on out into the Pacific rather harmlessly. And this is where all the rising motion is right now. Not all of it, but you get the idea. This is where things are favorable in this area. Upward motion in the atmosphere, low shear, all these disturbances. And it's the East Pacific's turn right now. And then I think once this calms down and we get into August, especially after the second week or so, it's going to get busy in the Atlantic. And I will show you the tweet from Ben that this graphic here came from, by the way. We'll talk about this towards the end of the update today. So the vorticity signature, you can see the eastern side of those vorticity areas, the other one's over here off the map. But it shows up really nice, these areas of energy. There's even another one just south of Central America, and all of these are progressing off to the west with time, and that is where, again, all the favorability lies at the moment. Some energy off the coast of Africa near the Cabo Verde Islands, but by and large the Atlantic Basin is quiet for now, and we need to enjoy it. We need to take the time during this quiet period to make sure we are ready, whatever that means for you. You know, everybody's different. You have different financial allowances that, for what you can and can't do. But this is the time to be prepared. As they say, the time to prepare is now. I know it's cliche, but use it wisely, because this is blank right now. And in a few weeks to a month's time, it won't be. All the actions over here right now, lots of convection, as you can see. Rising motion is in the Pacific, not really in the Atlantic Basin. We're still in that sinking pattern and the suppressed phase of the Madden-Julian Oscillation, and that's going to change. We'll take a look at that, as I said, with Ben's tweet in just a moment, and I'll break it down for you. So moving farther east in the Atlantic Basin, the Caribbean is nice and clear of any disturbances. You have some low clouds, maybe the leading edge of a Saharan air layer, and a wind surge pushing through there with some moisture associated with it, kind of like a snowplow pushing snow in front of it. This kind of does the same thing. Small disturbance up over the very warm waters of the northern Gulf of Mexico there. I'll show you that too in just a moment. And then we've got this really impressive monsoon trough sitting out here where the wind direction is literally switching around and coming in from the west and the west-southwest. And that is the precursor. That's what we look for. You see that tail out there? It won't be long that this will become the incubator out here. This will become the grapevine, and the tropical waves will come off and they will develop and they'll head west out into the Atlantic, and then we will see, where they end up. Maybe they come over to the Gulf of Mexico, maybe they get up into the northeast, maybe they all ride up into the North Atlantic. I don't know. If I did know, it would be a lot different for me, for sure, but I don't know. I mean, I'd be able to sell that information and be one of the richest people in the world. So we figure it out together. That's what we're here for, right? All right, so real quick, looking in the Pacific. Again, this is really cool. You got to admit, these are the vorticity signatures in the GFS model here. 850 millibar geopotential height and the vorticity. There's that, and there's that right there. So you see those 4 areas And just real quickly going back to this is the eastern side of those three areas right there. Really cool. This is reality. This is what the satellite imagery is showing and picking it up from space. And this is what the GFS model is indicating in the numeric weather prediction world. It's just neat to me. I wish I could code this up myself. If I could live to be 300 years old or more, I'd probably go back and get a PhD in this kind of stuff and work on computer modeling. Anyway, there's this disturbance, that one, and watch what happens here when we put this into motion. You know, some of them develop, some of them don't. They're kind of competing with each other. We'll see. Then one of the systems does try to get going. I was trying to remember what I was going to say. Off the coast of Central America here, I think later on in time, yep, there it is. A little closer to Mexico, but it's also a week out, right? And that one might be strong if it can really get going and it heads on out. Kind of a skip there in the frames, but that's fine. We're talking way out in time. For now, this trio of systems will hog the energy. That's where the upward motion is. None of them really take off and become too strong, which is interesting because I think the Atlantic will take advantage of that, and we will see some very strong systems out here in the main development region, Caribbean, Gulf, and in the subtropical Atlantic as well. I think we're primed for some high ACE-producing hurricanes this year, accumulated cyclone energy. And instead of weak, short-lived systems, I think we're going to have a season a lot more like 2017, where they are strong farther out in the Atlantic before they get to where they're going. It's just that kind of a setup. In my opinion, I could be wrong, we'll see. And I think seeing the Pacific having trouble, I mean, Felicia was strong, yeah, Cat 4, but I mean, that's pretty much been it. We have not had a shooting gallery of intense hurricanes in the Pacific, and I think the Atlantic will take over. So looking out the next few days as we get into August here, you know, there's that monsoon trough. This is so neat to see. See how the wind barbs come here and then they turn around? And that's the flow of wind out there. This is that monsoon trough set up. And you can literally see that. I pulled this up to show you on the not the GFS, that's what I just showed you. The total precipitable water from the University of Wisconsin site. Look, you can even see the moisture getting pulled in back from the west-southwest to the east-northeast. That is so neat, and that's the precursor of what's coming. This is it. It's like dressing the stage for the show. You know, you've been planning the show, getting the actors, the technicians. Now you're dressing the stage because it's almost showtime, so to speak. That's the analogy. And this is an indicator of that monsoonal flow, the West African monsoon, the change of wind direction just offshore there. But nothing getting spat out, if you will. One large disturbance there. That'll probably have a lot of Saharan air with it south of that big old ridge. Huge subtropical ridge sitting out there over the Atlantic. A little weakness back over here. But watch what happens. This is hour 120, about 5 days out. Just looking out into the future a few more days, that ridge expands to the west with time. You see that? Now we lose that troughiness. Now the ridge is starting to expand more westward. It's encompassing most of the Atlantic, and that'll set us up for the prime part of the hurricane season. And since there's nothing on the map to show you except large-scale features, which are much more reliable in terms of whether or not they take place relative to a small tropical cyclone, look what happens as we go out into time at the 10-day mark. We'll just stop there, at least be reasonable. Huge expanse of high pressure all the way across the Atlantic. So anything that comes off would have a straight shot generally to the west with time if this pattern holds. And I think we're going to head into that kind of pattern sticking around once we get into the peak season. So speaking of that, I teased it in the thumbnail graphic there, so here it is. Ben tweeting earlier this morning about the Atlantic hurricane season is getting ready to turn more active. And he uses these great thematic maps to show us what we're looking at, what the prospects are. From mid-August, he says in the tweet, and I'm just going to explain this to you, a rising motion in the atmosphere looks to favor Africa, and then kind of push eastward into the Indian Ocean, while the Pacific forcing the upward motion in the Pacific begins to ease off. And then the islands in the U.S., and this was what we echoed on our thumbnail there, should be getting ready for a potentially busy peak season. I mean, this is it. And so here's where we are now. And let me use the color white to help highlight it. This, you know what, let's use the highlighter. This is generally where we are now. The 30th, 31st, it just pushes ahead a day through the first week of August. Upward motion over Africa, so we're going to have a lot of strong tropical waves generated over Africa, sinking over the heart of the tropical Atlantic there mostly, and then a pretty sizable and intense rising cell over the East Pacific. And that jives perfectly with this. See, it all makes sense now. That's that rising motion. That is it from Ben's tweet here. There it is. So as we go out into time, and hopefully this will work as I anticipate it will, the next frame takes us from the 7th of August through the 14th. This is still prevalent. So we're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4, couple hurricanes, whatever, in the East Pacific. This is still kind of unfavorable. And then this begins to really grow. That monsoon trough still there. Those anomalous westerly to southwesterly winds warming up the deep tropical Atlantic. Then push it ahead another 7 days. This is the 14th through the 21st. Now we begin to lose this. It becomes much more favorable across the Atlantic. But the most important thing, in my opinion, is look at this cell developing right here, this rising cell of what we call forcing, and it expands not only to the east, as Ben talked about, but look at the last frame. It expands into the Pacific, the Indian Ocean. It loses the Pacific, and then it grows more in the Atlantic. So let's just play this through, and you'll see it now, all one at a time. This is unfavorable for the Atlantic, unfavorable, a little bit more favorable, a lot more favorable as we get through towards the end of August. Look at that, almost completely filled with green there in the Atlantic basin. And it's interesting because water temperatures have really responded in some of these areas. Look at the Gulf, 31 Celsius over a huge area of the north central Gulf of Mexico. If you know your Celsius to Fahrenheit conversions, that is 87.8, I think it is, something like that. You could round it up and call it 88 degrees Fahrenheit. Now that's not upper ocean heat content. That's fairly shallow relative to the open Gulf, but that is like, wow. You get a hurricane coming up into that, and it'll mix it up and mix it out for the next event that might come along. But that's a very big area of coastline that has remarkably high upper ocean, shallow shelf water and available energy. The upper ocean heat content would get exhausted pretty quickly, especially if it's moving slow like Sally did last year. But anyway, that is a very interesting look for sure. Elsewhere around the peninsula, very warm, and pretty much the entire Gulf is 29 to 30 Celsius, which is basically 84, 85, 86 degrees Fahrenheit, something like that. And then looking at the broader picture, as that rising motion gets set up out here, much more favorable, it's generally warmer than average across the Atlantic basin. There's the Gulf running above average while we're cooling the Pacific, heading towards that La Nina. No question about it. I mean, we're not reversing this. It's not going to go back to El Nino. Time is up. We're going to be heading towards a La Nina almost certainly by the fall. And while all of this happens, the Atlantic becomes more favorable. So this is it. Use these next few weeks to do whatever you need to do. Get those trees trimmed. Check up on your insurance. I mean, that's a nightmare one way or the other, I'm sure. A lot of the people that have gone through that the last several years can tell you. But, try to do as much as you can and be proactive. Give the agent an email or a call that handles your policy. Find out what's up. If I have a claim to make, what's covered, what's not. Make sure your generator's in good working order. All of that work now will help keep it less stressful for you later. And it works for me too. All this equipment that I get ready to take out on these missions, it's all ready to go. I have very little that I have to do once something brews up. And it's stressful for me when I have to haul all this stuff out there. So I know how it is. And I even live in a hurricane prone area, and we've done the same kind of thing. Got some of our bushes trimmed back that could maybe scrape the house in high wind. And we're ready as a family. So I hope you do the same as well. All right, so I will do an update late tomorrow afternoon, and then for the next few days after that, I will be traveling to Arizona and beyond, doing some research and observation work and interviews and whatever. And I might do an update or two while I'm on the road. I'm not going to leave you hanging for a week. But Sunday, no update, but I'll be around tomorrow for sure. All right? Have a great rest of your Friday. I am Mark Sutter. Thanks for always for giving me your time and attention. I'll talk to you some more tomorrow.